50 Cent has just dropped a truth bomb that has the rap world buzzing. He revealed that Biggie's hate for Tupac was not just typical beef, but a friction that ran deeper and more intensely than anyone ever knew.
Battling each other. Because if y'all have a serious issue, you need to address that immediately.
He spilled the truth about secret deals, betrayal, and a twisted game the industry tried to hide. Let's break it down. The shocking revelation. For years, we were told the beef was simply East versus West, pride versus pride, and track versus track. But 50 Cent says that story is false. The truth cuts much deeper. Biggie's hate for Tupac didn't start over a diss track or fame. It began with a secret move behind closed doors. Once you hear his account, you'll never see Pac and Big the same way again. Brotherhood turned to war. It all started as a brotherhood. Two young kings on the rise, Biggie and Pac, sharing the same hustle and fire in their eyes. But the game flipped quickly. Rumors turned to war, and whispers in the streets had them both keeping score. When most people think about the legendary beef between Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G., they straight up picture two powerful artists destined to clash, as if it were inevitable or written in the stars. But that's not the case. A newcomer, a mentor. Picture this, it's 1,993 inches Los Angeles. Tupac Shakur is already an established platinum-selling artist, living the West Coast lifestyle to the fullest. He had hit albums, was starring in movies, and was essentially living the dream every aspiring hustler turned rapper fantasizes about. Now, enter Christopher Wallace, better known as Biggie Smalls or Big Papa, a hungry, up-and-coming lyricist from Brooklyn who was still pushing mixtapes on the block, trying to make a name for himself in an industry that barely knew his government name yet. The two men met through a mutual acquaintance who was a drug dealer, a connection that, to be frank, was quite common in the hip-hop world of the early 90s when the streets and the industry were still heavily interconnected. Genuine brotherhood. What happened next was truly special. Tupac didn't just meet Biggie and shake his hand. He welcomed the Brooklyn newcomer into his home with open arms, showing him immense love. He allowed this unknown rapper to crash on his couch like they were family. They smoked together, chopped it up about life in the game, and discussed the business side of hip-hop. Most importantly, Tupac began mentoring Biggie like a big brother schooling his younger sibling. Ed Lover from Yo! MTV Raps recalled how Tupac treated Biggie like a little brother during this period, even letting him bring women back to the house. This wasn't some industry handshake and fake love. This was genuine brotherhood, the kind of bond that should have lasted a lifetime, the kind of loyalty you don't break for anything. The blueprint for success. Tupac didn't just offer Biggie a place to sleep. He offered him something far more valuable than any chain or record deal. Knowledge and career advice that would literally shape Biggie's entire approach to making music and earning money. According to multiple sources present during these conversations and sessions, Tupac gave Biggie a whole blueprint for success that was revolutionary for that time-straight game that most industry heads wouldn't even share with their own crew. He told him something that sounds simple, but was incredibly profound and ahead of its time. Don't rap for men, rap for women on the singles. You can do the raw hip-hop stuff on the album. Think about how brilliant that advice was, how it changed the whole game. Tupac was essentially telling Biggie to make his singles commercially accessible to appeal to the ladies, who were a massive, untapped market with real buying power, while simultaneously keeping his street credibility and that raw, underground sound intact on the deeper album cuts for the real hip-hop heads. This formula, this strategy that Tupac handed to Biggie on a silver platter like an original gangster, passing down wisdom, became the foundation for Biggie's commercial breakthrough and his entire career trajectory that took him to superstardom. But the mentorship and the real talk didn't stop there. The mentorship didn't stop there. When Biggie was trying to figure out which manager to work with, Tupac was actually considering managing him himself, taking the talented MC completely under his wing. Let that sink in. Tupac was so invested in Biggie's success, so confident in his potential, that he was willing to take on the responsibility of guiding his entire career through the pitfalls of the industry. However, Tupac ultimately gave Biggie what was perhaps the most important and realist piece of advice he could offer. Nah, stay with Puff. He will make you a star. Tupac recognized that Sean Puff Daddy Combs had the industry connections, business acumen, and hustle necessary to propel Biggie to the superstardom he deserved. He selflessly encouraged Biggie to pursue that relationship rather than keeping him for himself. The Budweiser Superfest. The chemistry between the two artists wasn't confined to private studio sessions or Tupac's home. On October 24, 1993, at Madison Square Garden during the Budweiser Superfest, Tupac and Biggie actually freestyled together on stage in front of thousands of screaming fans. Nobody in that arena could have predicted that just a few short years later, these same two brothers would be at the center of a rivalry so toxic and poisonous that it would literally tear hip-hop apart and leave the culture bleeding. The unreleased diss track. Busta Rhymes, who witnessed their friendship firsthand and was close to the situation, shared a story that truly drives home how deep their bond was and how real the love between them remained. Busta Rhymes revealed that Biggie had once recorded a Tupac diss verse, some truly intense bars, but Biggie couldn't bring himself to release it out of loyalty and respect for what they had shared. Even when Diddy later tried to repurpose that verse for Biggie's posthumous album, Born Again in 1999, Biggie had already muted the lines because he simply could not disrespect someone he considered family, someone who had showed him genuine love when he was still an unknown. The constant battling of one another is a key part of hip-hop culture. You have to look back and consider what happened when they started battling each other. While 50 Cent disclosed some hard truths about the friction between Biggie and Tupac, he also revealed something unexpected. He has consistently argued that the feud was massively overhyped and was not the genuine, life-or-death street beef that the media portrayed it to be for ratings and clicks. 50 Cent maintains that these weren't two individuals who genuinely wanted to murder each other. They were two businessmen and artists who simply had a public fallout. This perspective is absolutely crucial to understanding the real story behind all the smoke and mirrors. 50 Cent is essentially saying that if Tupac and Biggie had truly wanted to body each other, if they had the murderous intent, the media kept pushing for profit, they would have handled it in the streets immediately. The way real, on-site beef is handled. They wouldn't have been making diss records and doing interviews talking slick. They would have caught each other slipping and taken care of business right then and there with no hesitation. The fact that they didn't, according to 50's analysis, proves that this was not actual street beef in the traditional sense. But here's the big question. If they didn't truly hate each other, if they were actually brothers torn apart by circumstances beyond their control, what really happened? How did we get from Biggie crashing on Tupac's couch in 1993, learning the game and getting blessed with knowledge, to both of them being dead within 6 months of each other by 1997, with the entire hip-hop world mourning? That is where the story gets truly complicated, messy, and tragic. The Quad Studios ambush. The 30th of November, 1994. To understand why 50 Cent's perspective on this situation is so revolutionary and different from what we've been told, we need to examine the exact moment everything fell apart. The 30th of November, 1994, at Quad Recording Studios in Times Square. This night would fundamentally alter the trajectory of hip-hop history and set in motion the events that ultimately claimed both kings' lives. Visualize the scene. Tupac arrives at Quad Studios to lay down some tracks, just another night getting to work. As he enters the building, he sees Biggie, Diddy, and members of Junior Mafia posted up outside, chilling, seemingly without concern. But as Tupac makes his way inside, 3 armed men in ski masks suddenly appear out of nowhere. They ambush him, robbing him of $35,000 worth of jewelry chains, rings, etc. And then, in an act of violence that would forever haunt hip-hop, they shot him 5 times in the chest, groin, and hand, leaving him bleeding out on the studio floor. The seed of doubt. Here is where the story becomes crucial to understanding 50 Cent's view that Biggie didn't truly hate Tupac, that the whole beef was built on something other than real animosity. As Tupac was being wheeled out on a stretcher, barely clinging to life and in immense pain, he spotted Biggie and Diddy upstairs in the studio, looking unfazed and unshaken. In a moment of rage, pain, and confusion, he flipped them off and yelled, "Come here, open your mouth! Didn't I tell you not to fuck with me?" Tupac's reaction was reportedly not based on actually seeing Biggie pull the trigger or orchestrate the setup. It was based on the fact that Biggie and Diddy were there in the same building at the same time and seemed unaffected by what had just happened to their supposed friend and mentor. Betrayal compounded. What made the situation even worse was that literally hours after being shot 5 times and left for dead, Tupac was arrested on sexual molestation charges stemming from an incident back in November 1993. He was convicted the very next day and ended up serving 9 months of an 18-month sentence upstate. From Tupac's perspective, sitting in that jail cell at Rikers Island month after month with nothing but time to think, the math seemed to add up to betrayal. The pieces appeared to fit. He told Vibe magazine in 1995, "I thought my closest homies would be the ones to set me up." The evidence versus the perception. Here's the thing. There was never any actual evidence linking Biggie to the Quad Studio shooting, not one shred of proof. The shooting has been widely attributed to associates of Jacques Haitian Jack, Agnant, and Jimmy Henchman Rosemond, or possibly Crip gang members, potentially related to disputes over a $40,000 extortion case and various street-level beefs that had nothing to do with Biggie whatsoever. Biggie even visited Tupac in Rikers Island, desperately trying to convince him face-to-face that he had nothing to do with the shooting, that he would never violate their bond like that. But by that point, the seed of doubt had been planted in Tupac's mind, and it had taken root so deeply that no amount of denial or explanation could uproot it or change his perspective. The paranoia, fear, and sense of abandonment became too much for Tupac to see past or forgive. The real villains. Industry vultures. According to 50 Cent, the real villains in this story weren't Tupac and Biggie. They were the record label executives who saw an opportunity to exploit this personal tragedy for profit, to make millions off the blood and pain. They were the industry snakes and vultures who took what should have been a private misunderstanding and turned it into a full-scale coastal war that would sell millions of records and generate billions of dollars in publicity, regardless of the human cost. Enter Suge Knight and Death Row Records, the most notorious label in hip-hop at that time. While Tupac was incarcerated at Clinton Correctional Facility from February to October 1995, feeling abandoned by everyone, Knight swooped in like a savior with a bag. He posted Tupac's $1.4 million bail on the 12th of October 1995 and signed him to Death Row Records for a reported $3.5 million deal that changed everything. Suge Knight was not simply being generous or showing love, he had his own agenda and beef to settle. Knight was already feuding with Diddy over various business disputes and perceived slights, and he saw Tupac as the perfect weapon to use against Bad Boy Records and everything it represented. This is where 50 Cent's analysis becomes crucial. Knight was already engaged in a public war with Diddy, and signing Tupac gave him the ammunition he needed to escalate that war to unprecedented levels. The Source Awards and the Official Divide. At the 3rd of August 1995, Source Awards in New York, Knight took the stage and publicly threw shots at Diddy in front of the entire industry. The crowd booed loudly, the tension became palpable, and the coastal divide became official, with everyone forced to choose sides. But here is the most sinister part, which 50 Cent has illuminated for years. These label executives were actively escalating a conflict that didn't need to exist. They were pouring gasoline on a fire that could have been extinguished with an honest conversation and genuine reconciliation between two brothers. The Who Shot Ya catalyst. The escalation intensified with the 28th of February 1995 release of Who Shot Ya as the B-side to Biggie's Big Papa single. According to Diddy and Bad Boy Records, the song was recorded before the Quad Studio shooting and was about a completely random robbery. However, the timing of its release, just months after Tupac had been shot 5 times and left for dead, made it impossible for Tupac to see it as anything other than a direct taunt, a mocking reminder of his pain and near-death experience. The lyrics, "Who Shot You?" felt like salt being poured into an open wound, regardless of the song's actual origins or intent. Total War, hit him up. Tupac responded the way he felt he had to the way the streets demanded he respond to maintain his credibility and respect. His diss tracks came fast and furious, culminating in the nuclear bomb that was Hit 'Em Up in June 1996. This was not just a diss track, it was a declaration of total war, a scorched earth policy that targeted not just Biggie, but Diddy, Junior Mafia, Mobb Deep, and essentially anyone associated with the East Coast who posed a problem. The lyrics were not just threatening, they promised violence, revenge, and bloodshed if the situation continued without someone backing down. Biggie's silence and loyalty. But here's what 50 Cent wants us to understand about all of this. Biggie remained mostly silent publicly throughout this entire escalation, choosing not to fully engage in the back and forth. He focused on his music, his album Life After Death, his family, and his career, deliberately staying out of the fray. Yes, there were subliminal disses in some of his songs, like Long Kiss Goodnight, which some people interpreted as shots at Tupac and the West Coast. However, Biggie never released anything approaching the level of vitriol and direct, named confrontation that Tupac was putting out for the world to hear. In his last interview before his death, Biggie said something that truly captures this dynamic and the whole truth of the situation.
Coastal war, like, I never hated nobody from the West Coast, you know what I'm saying? It was a personal beef, you know what I'm saying? And I figure like this, that man has passed away, we just need to just let that be it. I kind of recognize the power that me and Tupac had to be able to have a personal problem with each other and wage an East Coast, West Coast beef. I mean, that's a coast against a coast, just two regular dudes, So since he's gone, I think I got to take his place and my place to take all the power I can to just squash.
In his last interview before his death, Biggie said something that truly captures the whole dynamic of the conflict. While the specific quote is omitted here, those words, spoken just days before his own murder, cut deep and had people asking, did Biggie really hate Tupac? While we have been fed different narratives for nearly 3 decades, 50 Cent's perspective on this tragedy is fundamentally important and unique. 50 Cent wasn't just some random commentator. He lived through a remarkably similar experience. He survived his own attempted murder and learned crucial lessons from what happened to Tupac and Biggie that literally saved his life. The survival blueprint. In a revealing interview where he was completely honest, 50 Cent explained exactly how Tupac and Biggie's deaths influenced his own survival and changed his entire approach. When he was shot 9 times in 2000, 50 Cent survived because he had studied their deaths with the attention to detail of a street general studying past battles. Tupac was shot in a drive-by on the 7th of September 1996 in Las Vegas, dying 6 days later on September 13 at just 25 years old. Biggie was gunned down on the 9th of March 1997 after leaving a Vibe magazine party in Los Angeles, dead at 24. Both were killed within 6 months of each other, and both died from wounds to their torsos that 50 Cent recognized could have been prevented by body armor. Simple as that. 50 Cent took those lessons to heart like scripture. When he survived being shot 9 times in 2000, getting hit in the face, hand, and all over his body, it was partly because he had learned from their fatal mistake and stayed prepared for war by wearing a bulletproof vest. 50 Cent's honest assessment. In his analysis of both artists' skills and legacies, 50 Cent has been remarkably balanced and honest. He has praised Biggie's technical prowess while acknowledging Tupac's cultural impact. He has also been clear about the reality of their artistic differences versus their personal relationship. In a 2023 clip titled 50 Cent's Honest Take, Was Tupac an All-Time Great? He broke down what he saw as Tupac's strengths and limitations without any sugarcoating. He wasn't able to articulate street life like Nas, talk slick like Jay-Z, or be funny like Biggie. He couldn't spit as hard as Eminem. He didn't flow like Biggie either. While some might see these comments as disrespectful, 50 Cent immediately followed up with a crucial perspective that changes the whole context. Every rapper who grew up in the 90 seconds owes something to Tupac. People either try to emulate him in some way. What 50 Cent is doing here is separating technical skill from cultural impact and artistry from influence. He's arguing that while Biggie might have been the superior technical rapper, the better pure MC in terms of flow, wordplay, and wit, Tupac's impact on hip-hop culture and his ability to emotionally connect with listeners on a soul level was unmatched. Crucially, he's making it clear that these artistic differences don't translate into personal hatred, they're just different strengths that both titans possessed and brought to the table. 50 Cent even shares that he often listens to both artists back-to-back, appreciating Tupac's vulnerability and Biggie's polish in equal measure, showing love to both. This is not the behavior of someone who believes these two were mortal enemies. This is someone who recognizes that their conflict was a tragedy precisely because they should have been allies building together, not enemies tearing each other down. Perhaps the most explosive revelation 50 Cent has made in recent years involves his accusations against Sean Diddy Combs regarding Tupac's murder. In October 2023, amid resurfaced rumors and lawsuits, 50 Cent directly accused Diddy of orchestrating Tupac's death, stating bluntly, "He ordered Tupac's murder." This is not casual speculation. 50 Cent is directly tying this into his broader narrative that label executives like Diddy and Suge Knight escalated the beef for profit and power, ultimately leading to tragedy. Recent developments have added new layers to these accusations. A January 2025 documentary reportedly features ex-Diddy bodyguard Gene Deal, alleging that Diddy could have been involved in Biggie's death as well, citing discussions about a potential hit being put out. With Diddy now facing federal charges, including sex trafficking and racketeering, there is renewed scrutiny on both unsolved murders and the role that industry manipulation and money may have played in escalating conflicts to deadly levels. The real conclusion. What 50 Cent is truly revealing is that the entire East Coast-West Coast beef, the entire narrative of Tupac and Biggie hating each other and wanting blood, was largely manufactured and pushed by people who had financial interests in keeping the drama alive for profit. Neither murder has been officially solved to this day, leaving the streets and the culture with an open wound. Tupac's shooter has never been charged, and Biggie's shooter remains unknown, although theories point to various figures, including Wardell Poochie Fard, a Bloods affiliate connected to Suge Knight, or various LAPD corruption ties. The Game, 50 Cent's former rival, once compared their 2005 feud to Tupac and Biggie, warning that it could end with both of them going out like Tupac and Biggie with bodies in the streets. 50 Cent acknowledged this comparison and used it as a warning against escalation, demonstrating that he learned the critical lesson that Tupac and Biggie never got the chance to learn before it was too late. Tupac himself, in his own final words, seemed to understand the nuance of the situation before his death, showing that he knew what the conflict truly was, an industry trap.
It was never a beef, it's only a difference in opinion. That's like me being mad at my little brother because he get cash now. I'm not mad at that. I'm just mad at my little brother when he don't respect me. Now when you don't respect me, I'm gonna spank your ass. I don't give a fuck how rich you got on the block. I'm your big brother. I will break your big ass down.
The words from Tupac that are absolutely crucial to understanding the truth that 50 Cent has been trying to illuminate likely come from his interview with Vibe magazine in 1996, shortly before his death. In a moment of clarity, Tupac said, "It's not that I hate Biggie. I don't hate him. The reason I did what I did because I was hurt. I thought my closest homies would be the ones to set me up. It's all just business to them." Betrayal versus hatred. This statement is the core of 50 Cent's argument. Even Tupac, in moments when he wasn't driven by emotion, recognized that the conflict wasn't about hatred. It was about the pain of feeling betrayed by someone he considered family and a little brother who he believed violated the code during the Quad Studios shooting. This is fundamentally different from the media-driven narrative of two men who were mortal enemies determined to kill each other from day one. After Tupac's death, there were significant attempts to restore order. Louis Farrakhan brokered the 22nd of September 1996 peace summit at his mosque, though this effort ultimately faltered. Snoop Dogg and Diddy called for unity, holding a significant meeting on the 3rd of April 1997 that brought together major figures from both coasts to officially squash the beef. Tragically, these attempts came too late to save Biggie, who was killed just weeks before that April meeting could solidify a lasting truce. Based on 50 Cent's analysis, the rivalry was not primarily fueled by genuine street hatred or personal animosity between Tupac and Biggie. The evidence points to the conflict being an industry setup and a personal tragedy that was deliberately exploited. The root. The feud was rooted in Tupac's belief that Biggie was present and unconcerned during the Quad Studios shooting, leading to a profound sense of betrayal and paranoia while Tupac was incarcerated. The fuel. The conflict was then manufactured and escalated by record label executives like Suge Knight and Diddy. They saw the personal misunderstanding as a profitable commodity, using their respective artists to wage a coastal war for financial gain and power, regardless of the lethal consequences. 50 Cent's unique insight, gained through his own experience of being shot and learning from the mistakes of the fallen kings, illuminates the truth. Tupac and Biggie were not destined rivals, but allies who became victims of a manipulative industry that prioritized profit over their lives.